Let me illustrate why evil is not a thing. Evil is kind of like rot to a tree. You have to have a tree to have rot in it. Evil is like rust to a car. Unless you have iron, you can't have rust in it because it exists only in that metal. Evil is like mothballs and wool. You can't have a moth hole unless you have some wool to have the moth hole in it. Evil is like an amputation in a body. You have to have a body there in order for it to be maimed or amputated. So evil doesn't exist in itself. It's an ontological parasite. It exists only in some other being, not in and of itself. Problem one, if evil is a corruption or a privation in a good thing, then it's not real, because a whole is nothing. Response, it's a real lack in a good thing. Being blind, being deaf, and being lame are real. Just close your eyes and walk around for a day. It's a real lack of sight. Being maimed is a real lack of having all of your limbs. So evil is not a real thing in itself, but it's a reality that exists in real things as a privation or corruption of them. Problem two, if evil is the absence or negation of good, then evil is just a negative. But evil is really a positive reality. It's not just a negative reality. So isn't this wrong because it reduces evil to a mere absence or a negation? The answer is evil is not an absence, it's a privation. What's the difference? An absence is only something that's not there. For example, a stone doesn't have sight. So sight is not in a stone. It's only absent. It's not a privation because the stone isn't supposed to see, so it doesn't lack anything that by nature it's supposed to have. Privation is something not there that ought to be there. Ought to have two arms, but one is missing. Ought to have two legs, but one is amputated. For instance, sight is merely absent in the stone, but the stone is a privation in a human because nature, humans are supposed to see, and stones are not supposed to see by nature. A very important note here. Evil does not exist in itself, but only in another. It's like a parasite. It doesn't exist in itself, but exists in something else. Nothing is totally evil in a physical sense. Something might be totally evil in a moral sense, but not in a physical sense. For example, a totally rusted car is no car at all. What would it be? A brown spot on a pavement. A totally rotten tree is no longer a tree. What is it? Topsoil. You can't have anything that is totally privated, because if it's totally privated, it's not there. What's a totally moth-eaten garment? A hanger in the closet. It's not there at all. So evil is a privation in something else, but if the thing is totally privated, it doesn't exist at all, because evil doesn't exist in and of itself. Problem one, what about Satan in the Bible? Is he not totally evil? Doesn't the Bible describe him as a sinister, deceiving, conniving, totally evil person? Answer, he is totally evil morally in what he does, but not metaphysically in his being. According to the Bible, he was a perfect angel that God created, an archangel who rebelled against God, 1 Timothy 3:6, pictured in Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28. So he's totally evil morally in what he does, totally evil intentionally in what he intends to do, but not metaphysically, because he has a good being, a good mind, a good will, good powers that were given to him as he was created by God. Problem two, what about total depravity? Doesn't the Bible teach that we're totally depraved? Answer, we're totally incapable of achieving our own salvation, the Bible says, but we're not totally depraved in a metaphysical sense, or we wouldn't exist. We exist and have minds and have wills, but we're totally incapable because we're fallen human creatures, according to the Bible, totally incapable of initiating or attaining our own salvation. Problem 3, what about poison? Isn't poison completely evil? No, every chemical in poison is good. Every molecule is good. Every atom is good. There are no evil chemicals in poison. And as St. Augustine put it, if poison were evil in itself, then the one that would suffer most from it would be the snake. But it doesn't. Evil is something that exists in a good thing, but there is nothing that is evil in itself. Well, if that's the nature of evil, if God created only good things, and these good things ended up with some privations or lacks or corruptions in them, then where did they come from? What brought the corruption in it? What brought the lack? What is the origin of evil? Well, the problem can be stated this way. If God is absolutely good, and a good God cannot create anything that is not good, and a good creature cannot do evil, therefore evil cannot arise in such a world. But evil did arise in this world, so either God is not absolutely good, or he didn't create absolutely good creatures. Because if he's absolutely good and created absolutely good creatures, they wouldn't have been able to do evil. That's the dilemma of the origin of evil. St. Augustine, again, in his anti-Manichaean writings, answered that problem with what has become known as the free will defense. Evil did arise in this world, hence either A or B is false or both, and what we're going to say is to challenge one of the premises. God is not absolutely good, and or God did not create good creature. We're going to accept the first premise because the Bible says he can't even look on evil. Habakkuk 1:3, in his presence the angels sing, holy, holy, holy. Isaiah 6, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Matthew 5:48. God is absolutely good. In fact, you wouldn't know something wasn't good unless you knew what was absolutely good, because you have to measure it by a standard beyond it. So we can't reject the first premise, so we must challenge the second one. God did not create a good creature. In Genesis chapter 1, after almost every day it says it is good, it is good, it is good, and after the last day it says it's very good. Ecclesiastes 7 says God made man upright. We were made perfect creatures. Lucifer was made a perfect creature. How then did evil occur in a perfect universe with perfect creatures made by a perfect God? The answer, St. Augustine said, is that God is absolutely good. God cannot create anything that's not good. That's for certain. And a good creature cannot do evil is a false premise. And it's a false premise at St. Augustine because a good creature can do evil. The premise is false, hence the conclusion does not follow from the premises if the premise is false. Why is the premise false? How can a good creature created by an absolutely good God do evil? St. Augustine says it happened this way. God created only good things. One of the good things God created was free will. You never see anybody marching against freedom. Back to bondage. I want to do everything my mother ever said. Nobody marches against freedom. Everybody marches for freedom. And if perchance sometime you should see people marching against freedom, they freely chose to do so. So they're really using their freedom and experiencing it and enjoying it to argue against freedom. Freedom is a good thing. But free will makes evil possible. Why? Because it's the power to do otherwise. It's the power to do otherwise. But to do otherwise than good is evil. Hence, a good free creature can do evil. In other words, God made evil possible by making free creatures. But we make evil actual by using our freedom.